Okay, how's it going, y'all? So we're gonna read some Stalin, some of the more earlier Stalin. I mean, it's 1906. Um, you know, his stuff starts around 1900, like right at 1900 is when his first one on here comes out. But this is gonna be March 1906. This is the Agrarian Question by Joseph Stalin, and this is part one of the Agrarian Question. Let's go ahead and get into this. The old order is breaking up. The countryside is in upheaval. The peasantry, who only yesterday were crushed and downtrodden, are today rising to their feet and straightening their backs. The peasant movement, which only yesterday was helpless, is today sweeping like a turbulent flood against the old order. Get out of the way or I'll sweep you away. The peasants want the landlord's land. The peasants want to abolish the remnants of serfdom. Such are the voices now heard in the rebellious villages and hamlets of Russia. Those who count on silencing the peasants by means of bullets are mistaken. Life has shown us that this only serves still further to inflame and intensify the revolutionary peasant movement. And those who try to pacify the peasants with empty promises and peasants' banks are also mistaken. The peasants want land. They dream of this land, and of course, they will not be satisfied until they have seized the landlord's land. Of what are empty promises and peasants' banks to them? The peasants want to seize the landlord's land. In this way, they seek to abolish the remnants of serfdom. And those who are not betraying the peasants must strive to settle the agrarian question precisely on this basis. But how are the peasants to gain possession of the landlord's land? It is said that the only way is, quote, purchase on easy terms, end quote. The government and the landlords have plenty of spare land. These gentlemen tell us, if the peasants purchase this land, everything will settle itself, and in this way, the wolves will be sated and the sheep remain whole. But they do not ask what the peasants are to buy the land with after they have been stripped not only of their money, but also of their very skins. They do not stop to think that in buying the land, the peasants will only have bad land foisted upon them, while the landlords will keep the good land for themselves, as they succeeded in doing during the emancipation of the serfs. Besides, why should the peasants buy the land which has been theirs for ages? Have not both the government's and the landlord's lands been watered by the sweat of the peasants? Did not these lands belong to the peasants? Were not the peasants deprived of this heritage of their fathers and grandfathers? What justice is there in the demand that the peasants should buy the very land that was taken from them? And is the question of the peasant movement a question of buying and selling? Is not the aim of the peasant movement to emancipate the peasants? Who will free the peasants from the yoke of serfdom, if not the peasants themselves? And yet these gentlemen assure us that the landlords will emancipate the peasants, if only they are given a little hard cash. And believe it or not, this emancipation, it seems, is to be carried out under the direction of the czarist bureaucracy, the self-same bureaucracy, which more than once has met the starving peasants with cannons and machine guns. No, buying out the land will not save the peasant. Whoever advises them to accept purchase on easy terms, end quote, is a traitor, because he is trying to catch the peasants in the real estate agent's net and does not want the emancipation of the peasants to be brought about by the peasants themselves. Since the peasants want to seize the landlord's land, since they must abolish the survivals of serfdom in this way, since, quote, purchase on easy terms, end quote, will not save them, since the emancipation of the peasants must be brought about by the peasants themselves, then there cannot be the slightest doubt that the only way is to take the land from the landlords, that is, to confiscate these lands. This is the way out. The question is, how far should this confiscation go? Has it any limit? Should the peasant take only part of the land or all of it? Some say that to take all the land would be going too far, that it is sufficient to take part of the land to satisfy the peasants. Let us assume that it is so. But what is to be done if the peasants demand more? We cannot stand in their way and say, halt, don't go any further. That would be reactionary. And have not events in Russia shown that the peasants are actually demanding the confiscation of all the landlord's land? Besides, what does taking a part mean? What part should be taken from the landlords? 1/2 or 1/3? Who is to settle this question, the landlords alone or the landlords in conjugation with the peasants? As you see, this still leaves plenty of scope for the real estate agent. There is still scope for bargaining between the landlords and the peasants. And this is fundamentally opposed to the task of emancipating the peasants. The peasants must once and for all get accustomed to the idea that it is necessary not to bargain with the landlords, but to fight them. We must not mend the yoke of serfdom, but smash it, so as to abolish the remnants of serfdom forever. To take only part means patching up the survivals of serfdom, which is incompatible with the task of emancipating the peasants. Clearly, the only way is to take all the land from the landlords. That alone will enable the peasant movement to achieve its aim. That alone can stimulate the energy of the people. That alone can sweep away the fossil remnants of serfdom. Thus, the present movement in the countryside is a democratic peasant movement. The aim of this movement is to abolish the remnants of serfdom. To abolish these remnants, it is necessary to confiscate all landlord and government lands. Certain gentlemen ask us accusingly, why did not social democracy demand the confiscation of all the land before? Why until recently did it speak only about confiscating the Otrensky? Because, gentlemen, in 1903, when the party talked about the Otrensky, the Russian peasantry had not yet been drawn into the movement. It was the party's duty to carry into the countryside a slogan that would fire the peasants' hearts and rouse them against the remnants of serfdom. Confiscate the Otrensky was precisely such a slogan, because the Otrensky vividly reminded the Russian peasants of the injustice of the remnants of serfdom. But times have changed. The peasant movement has grown. It is no longer necessary to call it into being. It is already in full swing. The question today is not how to get the peasants moving, but what the peasants who are already moving should demand. Clearly, here definite demands are what is needed, and so the party tells the peasants that they ought to demand the confiscation of all landlord and government lands. This shows that everything has its time and place, and this applies to the Otrensky as well as the confiscation of all the land. Okay, yes, that's part one of the Agrarian question. Works, Volume 1, November 1901. Right, okay, so it's 1906 is when this was. Well, thank y'all for tuning in. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Tumblr, Medium, all of these Marxists saw. Hit me up there. Y'all have a great day. Dodada goy.